Back, well, tens of thousands of Sydney commuters are facing a day of disruptions as train and bus workers go on strike on the same day the state's public school teachers walk off the job. Joining me live is New South Wales Union Secretary Mark Morey. Thanks for your time. This all seems aimed at maximum disruption.
Thanks for the opportunity, Tom. No, it wasn't. It's just a coincidence that these things have all come together. Rail workers have been on taking industrial action since May this year. Bus drivers have been taking action over the last couple of months, and teachers, this is a culmination of a campaign over the last 2 years. Unfortunately, the New South Wales state government has known about the completion of the EA for rail workers in May. They know the teachers' award is coming to an end at the end of this year, and they have done nothing but drag their heels in negotiations or trying to find a settlement to these issues.
So where are negotiations actually at? The government says 2.5% is on the table. That does seem to compare right now fairly well with the rest of the population.
Well, there's two things to be said about that, Tom. Firstly, there was a 0.3% pay rise given to these workers last year. And secondly, we know that the Reserve Bank Governor is calling for wages to be around 3%. I'd much rather rely on the Reserve Bank Governor than Matt Kean, the Treasurer of New South Wales, for these figures. These workers are not asking for excessive pay rises, they're asking for a fair pay rise, and we also know that these pay rises will flow onto the private sector. The wages caps have pushed down wages in the private sector as well, and with cost of living and petrol at $2 a litre, I think people need a fair pay rise.
So, yeah, what you've been saying, what the unions have been saying is inflation is the issue. It's not actually with us yet that is higher than expected or higher than band inflation. Would you accept something that had part of the pay rise dependent on inflation? So you could say lock in your 2.5%, but any inflation over 2% gets added on to a pay rise. What about something like that?
The unions are open to discussing all these things. However, we've got to remember, specifically for the teachers, what we're seeing is a drain of teachers out of our schools because wages are not keeping up with other professions. We know there from the government's secret documents there's going to be a 5,000 teacher shortage over the next 5 years. Many of these teachers travel long ways to their schools because they can't afford to live in the suburbs in which they teach. We need some way of ensuring that we have quality teachers who are retained and able to teach in our schools. Similarly, with rail workers, we need skilled workers, and we need to ensure that pay is keeping up with the cost of living, but is also keeping up with what other states are offering.
Well, on cost of living for teachers then, so government data suggests in the past 10 years, teachers at the top of the scale have had a 7% real wage increase over the last 10 years to 108K, and that graduates are still on more, starting graduates that is, are still on more than starting graduates at accountancy or legal firms.
Well, I think what you'll find is that most teachers who are entering the teaching profession are getting paid less than qualified electricians and plumbers. I think you'll find that most of them are doing 2 or 3 years.
Isn't that just because tradies are on a huge packet?
Families.
What about comparing them to accountants and people in the legal fraternity?
Well, you can compare them to accountants as well. I don't knock around with a lot of accountants. I do talk to a lot of plumbers and electricians, and they tell me they wouldn't be a teacher for quids. They just think the stress is too much, it's too hard.
OK, but you want to compare it to a couple of professions. I'm saying, what are other figures on people starting off in accountancy or the legal fraternity?
Well, I think the difference there is over a couple of years, they can make much, much bigger money than teachers will. Teachers don't climb through the pay scales at a great rate. They don't get huge bonuses. They don't get those huge opportunities. In fact, what we've seen is more red tape on teachers, more requirements to fill out administration. They're spending less time in the classroom teaching our kids. And I think that should be the concern, is retaining qualified, really good teachers who are doing a really good job in preparing our kids for the jobs of the future, many which don't exist at this point.